It was a legendary escape from a place that was supposed to be inescapable. 55 years ago this month, three men pulled off the impossible, breaking out of Alcatraz.
Fog, salt, and myth have always clung to Alcatraz. The island looked unbreakable, a slab of concrete and iron floating 1.25 miles off San Francisco, built to crush the idea of escape. Yet the quiet of one June night in 1962 still echoes a plan so careful it split legend from fact. In 2025, new analyses sharpen the mystery, but the ending remains stubbornly unresolved. The Rock, maximum security. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. The Rock rose from an 1850s military fort to a federal prison in 1934, purpose-built for the men other prisons could not control. The main cell house, built between 1910 and 1912, held 4 cell blocks, a dining hall, hospital, library, and offices inside a fortress of tool-resistant steel, and concrete inmates were counted as many as 13 times a day. Guards watched from elevated gun galleries. Metal detectors, tear gas canisters, and a nation-low guard-to-inmate ratio enforced an ethic of maximum security with minimum privilege. Even talking at meals had to be earned. Daily life was strict and psychologically grinding. D-Block the Hole meted out isolation for the most disruptive, amid racial segregation and a regime aimed at control rather than rehabilitation. Famous inmates such as Al Capone and Machine Gun Kelly added to a dark celebrity. Through its 29 years, the prison modernized with electrified fences and updated locks. Yet the salt air gnawed at everything. Utilities were costly, fresh water had to be ferried in, and maintenance teams fought corrosion that never ceased. High costs and decay finally closed Alcatraz on March 21st, 1963. Today, the National Park Service preserves it as a museum. More than 1 million visitors a year walk refurbished corridors where punishment and survival once blurred, and where one night's silence remade the Rock's reputation. The island's mythology rested on statistics and geography. 14 recorded escape attempts ended with captures, bodies, or presumed drownings. The bay's currents, the 50 to 55-degree water, and the distance to shore made flight seem like suicide. That assurance cracked on the night of June 11, 1962, when 3 men slipped their cells. What followed wasn't just a prison break, it was a story that challenged an institution's identity and left a question hanging over the cold water. Did they make it? Frank Morris. Mastermind. Frank Lee. Morris was not an ordinary inmate. Orphaned at 11, convicted by 13, he spent his youth moving through foster homes, institutions, and eventually prisons. He was smart, brilliant by many accounts, and practiced at slipping restraints. After fleeing Louisiana State Penitentiary, he was sent to Alcatraz in January 1960, precisely the place meant to end such habits. Placed near brothers John and Clarence Lynn, and near Allen, Westmen he'd known from other institutions Morris began to organize. He naturally assumed leadership. He understood how prisons worked, how they aged, and how to turn routine into cover. He studied guard patterns, learned the rhythm of counts and lights out, and discovered where sound carried and where it died. The team exploited salt-loosened concrete behind the vents beneath their sinks. With stolen metal spoons, discarded saw blades, and a handmade drill fashioned from a vacuum cleaner motor, they picked and bored at the walls, inch by inch, for months. Morris thought like an engineer and staged like a magician. He painted papier-mâché vent covers to hide the widening holes and time the noisiest work for music hour, letting his wheezing accordion swallow the sound of scraping and drilling. He kept lists in his head, which tools to hide, which materials to return to their places, which actions should never repeat the same way. Twice above the cell block, they found an unused space and built a secret workshop. There they assembled paddles, stitched a 6-by-14-foot raft, and sealed seams using steam pipes as improvised heat sources. They tested ideas in miniature: how to fold the rubber, where to add extra layers, and how to keep seams from peeling under strain. From prison scrap and patience, Morris turned myth into a testable problem. Whether the bay swallowed him or hid him, his plan was the cleverest in Alcatraz's history. and the one that cracked the rock's aura. The Lynn brothers. The Lynns grew up in a large, poor Florida farm family. Their crimes centered on bank robberies, repeated escape attempts in Atlanta. Penitentiary marked them as trouble, and Alcatraz was the system's answer. Reunited with Morris, they became the indispensable hands beside his mind. The brothers helped dig, conceal, and collect. From prison jobs, they gathered supplies. In their cells, they aided in sculpting papier-mâché grills and lifelike decoys. They stitched more than 50 raincoats into life vests and a raft, melting rubber to seal seams. A converted concertina, akin to a small accordion, became an air pump. They disguised progress with care, even crafting dummy heads topped with real hair swept from the barbershop floor. On the night they vanished, there was no shouting, no alarm, only morning roll call revealing pillows where faces should have been. Their value to the plan went beyond labor. They observed quietly and constantly which guard lingered, which one cut the round short, which light on the catwalk was burned out. They practiced moving silently, learned the exact distance a whisper could travel, and timed their nights to the quarter hour. In the workshop, they checked the raft for pinholes with water and a fingernail, then patched and rechecked. They rehearsed the climb, hand over hand, counting pipe joints in the dark. Every motion was premeditated, every risk weighed against the one thing they wanted more than anything: solid ground on some unknown shore. Afterward, hints flickered. A sealed bundle of personal effects attributed to the brothers was found. There were claims of Christmas cards and a debated 1975 photo that some believe showed the brothers in Brazil. For families and a fascinated public, each rumor nudged possibility. For officials, absence remained evidence of death. If the Lynns survived, they escaped not only an island, but the story written for them, fading into anonymity by design. Their absence has become its own presence in the tale. Two shadows that will not resolve. Crafting the illusion wasn't just in the digging or raft building, it was in the illusion. Deception made the first hours possible. The decoy heads, molded from soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper, painted in flesh tones and crowned with barbershop hair, fooled guards who checked for movement rather than shaking sleepers awake. Clothes and towels bulking the blankets suggested resting bodies. From the tier where guards walked at night, the dim light softened edges and finished the trick. The ruse extended to the walls themselves. Cardboard and papier-mâché vent covers, colored to match cell paint using art supplies, quietly lifted from the library and maintenance shop, hid the growing holes. From the corridor, a guard would see only an intact grill. Behind it waited a crawl-through passage. They added tiny tabs and wire hooks so the covers could be set and removed quickly, and scored their edges so they sat flush against cracked paint. The whole thing was designed for the briefest glance, a deception engineered for a moving eye. Prisons worldwide are cat-and-mouse theaters of deception, but few stunts rival Alcatraz for detail and discipline. As one investigator later observed, they didn't just dig out, they rehearsed a performance. The cells became a stage, the men actors who played sleeping ghosts while their real selves slipped into the crawl space, up to the roof and into legend. It's that theatrical precision, the belief that seeing can be engineered, that still captivates. The illusion did not just trick the guards. It bought the single most precious commodity in an escape. The escape relied less on brute force than on patience with aging infrastructure. Salt-damaged concrete behind sink vents provided a starting weakness. The men worked slowly, night after night, camouflaging progress at dawn. Music hour masked noise. When the openings were large enough, they crawled into an unguarded maintenance corridor and climbed to a deserted upper tier of the cell house, their hidden workshop. From there, they mapped a route to the roof. Plumbing pipes served as a ladder up a 30-foot rise. At the top, they pried open a ventilation shaft and, to avoid suspicion, crafted a fake bolt out of soap to make the grate look undisturbed. They learned which steps creaked, which bolts could be turned by hand, and which surfaces carried sound. They tucked tools in shadowed ledges, wrapped in cloth to stop them clinking. The path they carved was tight and precise, built around the prison's own blind spots and the quiet decay of a former fort. By the time they moved, the route was rehearsed and ready. Beneath the plan was an understanding of how large systems fail, not all at once, but at their seams. Concrete poured decades earlier and eaten by salt locks, perfect on paper, but vulnerable to routine. Coat raft and icy bay. The final barrier was the bay itself, cold, fast, and unforgiving. The raft the men built, about 6 by 14 feet, was stitched from more than 50 raincoats and sealed with heat from steam pipes. Life vests made the same way were designed to buy minutes in 50 to 55-degree water, where hypothermia is the real warden. Paddles, shaped from scavenged plywood, completed the kit. They plotted wind and tide the only way prisoners could, by memory of guard chatter, glimpses of the water during yard, and a rough sense of the moon. On June 11, 1962, sometime between 10:30 and 11 p.m., the men slipped to the northeastern shore and launched toward Angel Island, less than 2 miles away. After that, the night swallowed the details. On June 14, the Coast Guard recovered a paddle. That same day, a sealed parcel of personal effects turned up within a week. Pieces of a raincoat raft drifted near the Golden Gate Bridge, followed by a homemade life vest. No bodies were found. Officials leaned on the bay's physics. The water is cold, the currents are treacherous, the distance punishes the untrained. Warden Richard Willard once asked a BBC crew, "Do you think you could make it?" Others pointed to the plan's sophistication and the men's discipline. Later scientific work would sharpen that debate, suggesting a narrow tidal window that could have carried a small craft toward Angel Island. The raft remains the story's most audacious symbol, a handmade answer to the island's last defense. If they reached land, the hardest choices began. What to do with a rubber raft before dawn? Where to find dry clothes? Which direction to walk with numb feet and no lights? The best escape, paradoxically, is into ordinariness, into silence, into habits so dull no one remembers seeing you. The bay might have erased them. Common life might have hidden them better. Alan West, the man left behind. 4 men planned, only 3 left to Alan West, incarcerated on the rock since 1957, helped chisel, gather, and build. But on the night of execution, his opening was too small. He misjudged the final inches and could not wriggle through in time. As he widened the hole in a panic, the others moved on. The window was closing and dawn was coming. Discovered the next morning, West chose to cooperate. His account sketched the route to the corridor, the climb to the roof, the plan to reach Angel Island. He pointed investigators to finds like the paddle and belongings tied to the brothers. Some suspect the escape route was altered to keep West from betraying the plan if caught. Others see his cooperation as the most complete insider record of what actually happened. When Alcatraz closed in 1963, West was transferred to complete his sentence, left with the knowledge that a plan he helped mastermind worked for everyone but him. West's role complicates the morality tale. He was neither informer nor hero, but a man caught between loyalty and time, between the physics of concrete and the mathematics of sunrise. His details anchor the myth, the false bolt, the climb, the hidden shop. Without West, we would know far less about how the rock was actually beaten, a chilling confession or clever hoax. In 2013, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Police Department. "I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely," it claimed, naming Frank Morris and the 2 brothers, and stating that Morris died in 2005, one brother in 2008, and the writer, signed as John, was terminally ill and willing to surrender for medical care. The FBI quietly tested the letter. Handwriting comparisons, fingerprints, DNA. Nothing proved conclusive. The writing did not definitively match known samples, and no usable prints or DNA were recovered. For years, the letter remained out of public view until a local television report in 2018 revealed its existence, reviving interest in a case the FBI had officially closed in 1979 by declaring the escapees legally dead. The ambiguity fit the pattern. The brothers' family had long pointed to Christmas cards they said were sent by the pair. That debated 1975 photo, the one some believe shows the brothers in Brazil, lingered in the background. The U.S. Marshals Service, which technically still holds the case, released age-progressed images as recently as 2022 and has never fully shut the door on new leads. Whether the letter was a late confession or an elaborate fraud, it pulled the mystery into the present and reminded the country how hungry it remains for a good unsolved story. The letter's power lies in what it offers, not a triumphant ending, but a mundane one. A life of cheap apartments, odd jobs, distant cities and holidays, observed only by cards without return addresses. If true, it suggests the men outsmarted the prison only to accept the quiet anonymity that freedom sometimes demands. The ambiguity fit the pattern. The brothers' family had long pointed to Christmas cards they said were sent by the pair. That debated 1975 photo, the one some believe shows the brothers in Brazil, lingered in the background. The U.S. Marshal Service, which technically still holds the case, released age-progressed images as recently as 2022 and has never fully shut the door on new leads. Whether the letter was a late confession or an elaborate fraud, it pulled the mystery into the present and reminded the country how hungry it remains for a good unsolved story. Science versus skepticism. For decades, officials cited the bay as the ultimate deterrent. Cold water, fast currents, and distance made the rock inescapable, even if a cell could be breached. But as oceanography and computing power matured, that certainty was tested. In 2014, Dutch researchers modeled the tidal and current conditions for June 11, 1962. Their simulations suggested that if a small raft launched in a specific window, roughly between 11 p.m. and midnight, the currents could have helped carry it toward Angel Island launch earlier or later, and the bay likely pushes a craft out to sea or back toward the Golden Gate. That science doesn't prove survival, it shows feasibility, paired with the plan's precision, the mask drilling, the hidden workshop, the carefully sealed raft, and with the artifacts recovered after the escape. The model argues that success was possible if timing was exact. The letter that surfaced in 2013, the family claims of cards, the occasional sighting, and the marshal's age-progressed images all sustain a case that hovers between proof and possibility. The cultural pull is larger than the evidence alone. In an era of surveillance and digital trails, the idea that three men could vanish into quiet lives feels almost mythic. Part D.B. Cooper, part American folktale, films like 1979's Escape from Alcatraz sealed the story in popular memory as a contest between human ingenuity and institutional power. Tour boats still circle the island. Docents still describe D-Block. Visitors still peer at the dummy heads in glass and measure the distance to the city with their eyes. The rock now sells the ghost of its certainty, and the ghost keeps drawing crowds. What remains is a paradox. The rock was built to destroy the very notion of escape. The 1962 plan showed that even perfect systems depend on weak points: aging concrete, overlooked corridors, predictable routines. Perhaps the men froze in the tide. Perhaps they landed, moved through the dark, and disappeared into ordinary towns under ordinary names. The evidence refuses to choose for us. And so the island sits in the bay, a museum of concrete and questions, where visitors file past cells that look asleep and listen for the faint wheeze of an accordion that once covered the sound of digging. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Epoch Dive for more amazing documentaries.